This is my metric 110 piece tap and die set that ranges from M2 to M18. In this video, I wanted to challenge myself to make a sliding tailstock die holder. The holder will need to include an opening to accept the larger dies along with an adapter to suit the smaller dies. This is the standard die holder that is included in the kit. It has both a large and small version of itself. To make the die holder, I plan on using some leftover mild steel round bar and some alloy round bar for the handles. Before I get into the build, I wanted to demonstrate how the standard holder works and how if you don't correctly start the threading straight, you will end up with inconsistent threading on your parts. Although this looks good from this angle, just wait until you see the final result. You can clearly see that I didn't start the threading properly, and the result is that it isn't centered or straight. The beauty of the die holder I'm about to make is that it will be perfectly centered and aligned with the part every time, and it will also have the option to both manually wind it on or use the lathe to pull it on automatically. The largest die in the set measures at roughly 38mm in diameter, and the smaller die measures at 25mm in diameter. This first bar is 38mm and the second is 50mm in diameter. First order of process is to load the 38mm round bar into the lathe, get the face cleaned up and prepped for the live center. Now that the live center is in place, it's time to clean up the round bar and get it to the required dimension. Here you see me marking the material where I plan to machine it down to 13mm in dimension. This measurement is due to the maximum opening of my keyless drill chuck for the tailstock. Now I need to remove the round bar and cut it down to length. I could definitely attempt to part it off in the lathe, but knowing my luck, I will just break the blade as I still struggle with parting mild steel. Now that it's shortened to length, it's time to clean up the end and start boring out the middle to accommodate the large die. You might be wondering why I'm drilling so deep into the material instead of just the width of the die. This is because I'm allowing for future threading on much longer bolts than just the length of the outer sliding section of the die holder. So far it's coming along really well. Now it's time to test its fitment in the keyless drill chuck. I'm definitely pleased with the fitment and the overall look. Yes, it's basic, but this part really doesn't need to be very flash. This is the round bar that will now be machined down to suit the large die. In each step of this process, I'm figuring it out as I go. I don't have any plans drawn up. All I know is that it needs to be machined so the die fits inside relatively snug. For what seems like such a basic tool, it's incredible how many processes are involved in getting the required result. After what seemed like an eternity of machining the bore out, it's finally time to test whether the die actually fits. And it actually does. Time to continue the internal 18mm hole, as my largest die is 18mm. Holy cow, that's hot. Next I need to take it to the saw to cut off the excess length. Here I am now machining down the bore to suit the part that I made earlier that attaches to the drill chuck. That actually fits really well. Time to take everything over to the mill and drill the holes and tap the threads for the grub screws which will hold the dies in place. It's times like these that I wish I had a digital readout for both my mill and lathe. Although using the ruler trick to find center, it still took way longer than needed. Here I'm preparing to mark the placement for the 3 grub screws that will retain the large die. All 3 threads for the die are now complete. Time to take it back over to the lathe and set it up for knurling, which will allow enough grip to turn this tool by hand if needed. I know I've said it before, but looking at how knurling turns out, it's just so satisfying. If anyone watching has noticed I keep leaving the lathe key in the lathe chuck, yes, it's a bad trait I'm working on, but trust me, I always remove it and I'm well aware of the potential dangers of doing so. As you can see, the tool is mostly done. I now need to make the step down insert that will allow the use of the smaller dies. Now, as per usual, I've had to go searching for some scrap material to make this next part. The offcut of the last part wasn't large enough in diameter. Now at this point I was feeling brave, but due to the fact that I forgot to center the tip of the parting blade, it eventually grabbed and kicked the part in the chuck. So I gave up and resorted to using the hacksaw. I did lay a rag down before starting to help protect the lathe. Even after switching to the hacksaw, I still found myself on struggle street and then had no choice but to take it to the vise and cut it off using my electric bandsaw. That's the lathe work done. Now I need to take this part over to the mill, repeat the steps that I carried out earlier on the other part, more drilling, tapping and chamfering. The recess that I just drilled was for the grub screw to be able to grip the part so that it won't fall out or rotate. One final thing left to do is to drill and tap a thread for a small grub screw to grip the die when inserted. As I was backing out the tap, I also performed a magic trick. Check this out. Now that the die holder part is finished, it's time to move on to the sliding part of this build. I will need to machine a channel where an M6 Allen head screw will slide within. The head of the screw is 10mm in diameter. At this point, I noticed that the roughing mill wasn't happy with being plunged into the material, so I switched to a drill bit and I drilled a hole where the end mill could pass within. I'm now running a 10mm end mill down to create a step down for the screw head. Due to the burrs from the previous milling process, the fitment was temporarily tight and needed some persuasion. And yes, it does appear to be jammed in there now, but this is perfect for the next process. Once again, I've done something dumb. I forgot to tighten the collet chuck. As I mentioned earlier, I'm figuring all of this out as I go. I'm basically flying in the dark. What I've noticed at this point is that when I tighten the screw too much, it binds up and won't allow the outer part to slide. To remedy this, I will chuck it back in the mill and open the entire passage up to 10mm in diameter. For reference, this is where I will machine the step down away and delete it completely. 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, but I guess it's only more time and more lessons learnt along the way. One little extra oversight was that the little M6 screw had a rib surround, which was also causing it to bind as I tried to slide it along. A quick fix would be to machine it smooth. Thank God for the lathe. And just like that, we find ourselves back here again. Time to test whether it now slides freely. Now that's a win for sure. Spoiler alert, more drilling, tapping and chamfering to come. These final threads are for the handles that will allow more force when trying to cut larger threads. Although I feel my lathe has the torque to auto feed large threads, we are here now, so I might as well make some handles to allow manual use of the die holder. If anyone has noticed the custom spanner I'm using, the video before this one is on how it was made. If you'd like to help the channel out, be sure to check the video out, and if you're feeling generous, maybe even like the video and subscribe for more videos like this. Now it's finally time to make the 2 handles for the manual use of this die holder. I'm using some alloy round bar. This is because it's what I had laying about and I also love machining alloy. Both handles will be 100mm long, so I'm measuring out about 200mm or so of material. I will then clean up the surface, machine knurling, chamfer the ends and also add an M6 thread with the use of the tool that I've made in this video. And much to my own surprise, I didn't leave the chuck key in the chuck. That's definitely worthy of you hitting the like button on this video. Every time I take on a new project, I learn so many new things along the way. I've now learnt that knurling puts such a heavy side load on the material, and with this being alloy, the material deflected slightly, which caused an inconsistency with the knurling. See if you can spot the difference when it becomes closer to the chuck. This is due to the increased rigidity. And the moment we have all been waiting for, time to test the die holder. You will see me turning it by hand as the thread is only M6 and it's also very short. Straight away you can see that the die holder places the die perfectly in the center of the part that it's being turned onto. Yes, it does look like the handles will hit the carriage beneath the tool post, and yes, you're right, but once wound out of the way, this isn't an issue. The handles are this length to give a strong leverage when cutting really large threads. These two handles have come out looking great, and when paired with the contrast of the shiny mild steel, it looks even better. These handles will most likely always be hanging nearby, but won't be used that often as the threads that I will be cutting won't be much larger than M12. Time to test the performance of the auto feed function of this die holder. I've selected an M16 thread which will be a great test for the tool. If it can pass this test, I'm sure that any smaller thread will be no issue at all. For testing purposes, here is an M16 nut. The specs of the nut are M16 by 2mm. Let's see if the die holder actually works. It's moments like these where I feel super anxious of whether it will work or end in disaster. Whenever something is auto-fed, you need to be ready to shut the lathe off if something takes a turn for the worse. And off she goes on her own. What a relief. At this point, I just turned off the machine, switched the motor direction, and the die reversed its way off automatically. So there you have it, guys. This is my handmade custom tailstock die holder. I appreciate everyone who's stuck around to this point in the video. To let me know who has made it this far, comment Struggle Street in the comments below. And until next time, I'll see you in the next one.